They say that Johannesburg, Egoli, is a city built on gold and secrets. I just didn't know that my entire marriage was one of them. My name is Kanyesile. For 7 years, I lived a life that many women in my street back in Bulawayo would envy. My husband, Thabani, was a manager for a logistic company in South Africa, or at least that's the story he brought home. Every few months, he would drive across the border in a different car, always something shiny, always something that made the neighbors whisper as he pulled into our red brick driveway. He brought the big grocery hampers, the expensive clothes, and the luxury perfumes. He made sure our house in the suburbs was the smartest on the block. He was the perfect Ndebele man, respectful to my parents, a provider for our home. When he had to leave to go back across the border, he would hold me, his hands lingering on my braids, and say, "Uyakwazi sithanda sami, ngiwenzela lina lokho." Meaning, you know my love, I'm doing this for you. I believed him. I lived for those weekends once a month when he would cross the Bridge border just to be with me. I thought the only thing between us was distance. I didn't realize the distance was his greatest weapon. The first crack didn't come from a phone call or a lipstick stain. It came from a folder. Thabani had left some text papers in our home office. I was looking for a birth certificate for our youngest when a small crumpled slip fell out. It was a receipt for a private school, not in Bulawayo, but in Midrand, South Africa. The name at the top caught my breath: student Thabani Moyo, Jr., and the parent listed Mrs. Thabani Moyo. My heart felt like it had been gripped by a cold hand. I told myself it was a mistake. A relative? A cousin he was helping? But then I saw the bank statements, the monthly payments for groceries and rent. The monthly payments for groceries and rent in South Africa were 3 times what he was sending home to us. You know how it is. Once you find one thread, you can't stop pulling until the whole jersey is gone. I searched Facebook, not for Thabani. He was too smart for that. I searched for the address on that receipt, and there she was, a woman living in a beautiful complex in Midrand. I scrolled through her photos. There were no pictures of my husband, but there were pictures of her 2 sons. And in those boys, I saw my husband's eyes. I saw his jawline. I saw the way he smiles when he's proud. I realized that while I was waiting by the gate in Bulawayo for my provider to return, he was already home with someone else. I didn't call him. If I called him, he would have prepared a lie so smooth I would have slept on it. Instead, I packed a small bag. I told my mother I wanted to surprise him for his birthday. I boarded the Intercape bus at Park Road. As we crossed the Limpopo River at Bridge in the middle of the night, I looked at the dark water and wondered how many secrets that river carries between our two countries. I arrived at Park Station in Johannesburg with a heavy heart and an address burned into my brain. I took a taxi to Midrand, to a complex with high grey walls and purple bougainvillea hanging over the fences, a lock up and go lifestyle. I sat at a petrol station across the road for 3 hours, sipping a cold drink I couldn't taste. At 5:30 p.m., I saw it, the white SUV, the same one that sits in my driveway in Bulawayo. It pulled into the gate. I walked past the security guard, telling him I was a sister visiting from home. He let me in. I walked to Unit 42. The door was open to let in the afternoon breeze. I stood in the shadow of the doorway. I heard music, classic Oliver Mtukudzi, and the sound of children laughing. Then I heard her voice. She was speaking Ndebele, just like me. She was asking him if he wanted isichwala for dinner. I stepped into the light. Thabani was sitting on the sofa, a little girl on his lap. He looked up. The book in his hand hit the floor with a thud. The blood drained from his face until he looked like a ghost. Kanye, he whispered. The other woman came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron. She wasn't a mistress from a club. She was a mother. She was a wife. She looked at me, then at him, and asked the question that ended my life. Thabani, ngubani lo? Thabani, who is this? He couldn't answer. He just looked from her to me. In that moment, I realized the most painful truth. He hadn't just cheated, he had duplicated his life. He had a Bulawayo wife and a Joburg wife. To him, were just two different files in a cabinet. I wasn't the wife who was being cheated on. I was the long distance secret. The drive back to the border was the longest of my life. Thabani tried to follow me to the station. He tried to talk about tradition. He tried to say that a man needs a home where he works. He tried to use our culture as a shield for his cowardice. But there is no culture that says you should build a life on a foundation of broken trust. I am back in Bulawayo now. The big house feels empty, but at least the air is clean. The neighbors still look at the empty driveway, wondering where the big man has gone. They don't know that every grocery bag and every piece of jewelry was paid for with a lie. I am finding my own feet now. I am no longer the secret kept behind a closed door in a different country. I would rather be a woman standing alone in the truth than a queen sitting on a throne of lies. My name is Kanyesile, and for the first time in 7 years, I am finally home.